Hey guys, how you doing? Gonna cover flat rate pay today. Not flat rate, but flat rate pay to your technicians and your installers. So I'm gonna talk about technicians first, and I'm just gonna briefly go over how flat rate pay works for most of you guys. So it's pretty simple. You have a task that they do, and it's X amount of dollars. That has X amount of, not dollars again, that has X amount of time. Okay, you have X amount of time. That equals their hourly pay, whatever they get paid. It's not that hard, guys. So if you have a task that, say, a condenser fan motor change out or something like that, let's do this, a condenser fan motor. It pays $375. You have, an hour and a half into it, an hour and a half into it, technician gets paid an hour and a half. The $375 has nothing to do with him. You also have your call out fee and your diagnostic charge. Say that's $175, and you have an hour into that. They get an hour for that. So now they're at 2.5 hours to change a condenser fan motor and for their call out and diagnostics charge. Okay, so nothing major, nothing fancy about it. It's pretty simple. But your technician's only getting paid for what he's charging. So if your technician goes out there and he, cleans the blower, and he cleans the outdoor unit, cleans the condenser coil, but he doesn't charge anything, well, you get $0 and he gets $0. So there's no extra. When you're not on flat rate pay, I'm sorry I got my back to you, but when he's not on flat rate pay, you're still paying him hourly. So if he's there for 3.5 hours, but he's only charging for 2.5 hours, well, it doesn't matter to him because he's getting paid an extra hour. But whenever you charge him for flat rate pay, he's not going to do that. So you take this out, he does these two extra things because he believes that the customer needs them and the customer asks for them. Say he charges $125 for that, and that's a half hour. So now he's got an additional half hour here, and let's say on the condenser coil, he's only charging $85, and there's an additional half hour here. So now he's got 3.5 hours being charged to the customer, collecting for you for 3.5 hours, and he's getting paid 3.5 hours. It's a win-win all the way around. So in my opinion, it's the best way to go. So one of the biggest questions that we do have with flat rate pay is, okay, how do I pay them to come in and go to class and clean their truck and everything else? Well, again, task. You make a task for all that. So you have a task for shop and training. For, let's see, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, custom, in case you have something going on and they have to have custom. And these have a task number, so you have a task number that goes with each one. And that's just what it is. And the easiest way to make sure that these aren't being abused is they have to be approved by your management, by your service manager or your dispatcher. So for them to come in to the shop and restock their truck, clean their truck, whatever, they just have to let dispatch know, hey, I'm coming in, I'm restocking the truck, I'm taking an hour. Okay, that's not a big deal. You can track that. How many hours are they doing that? Are they doing that 1 hour a week, which is about all they should need? Not a big deal. Maybe 2 hours a week, depending on where you're at. Great. Training. Going to training for a distributor or some sales training or technical training or something. It's a 2-hour class. You're paying them for 2 hours. It's not a big deal. But if you got somebody that's doing shop time and they're doing, 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day of shop time and nobody's tracking it, that's a little taking advantage of the system. So this is the way you keep track of that, and you get them to come into the office, you get them to come do the training, you get them to do the paperwork and all of that. So last thing I'm going to talk about whenever it comes to this really is paperwork. how do I get them to turn in their paperwork, or how do I make sure that they're putting everything on their ticket time? They get paid off the ticket or invoice. Period. That's how they get paid. They don't get paid by clocking in. They don't get paid by calling into the dispatcher and say I worked 8 hours today. They only get paid on what they turn in a discussion. So it really helps make sure that everybody's turning in their paperwork, their paperwork's legible, and they can get their job done. And for the technicians, the ones that are really good and that pay attention to their jobs and are doing the right things, they can actually make a little bit more money. They can get paid a little bit more than what they're actually out there having to work, because they can get jobs done a little bit quicker than what's in a lot of the flat rates. The guys who kind of drag behind and don't care and kind of, lollygag around, they don't get paid as much. They don't make any extra money. They can't do 40 hours worth of work in 38 hours. So that's just how it is. When it comes to callbacks are on the technician. So now, we can go into a deeper dive of how to do the callbacks if that technician can't come on or something like that. That's I'm gonna do that in another video, because it gets a little cumbersome, but it's not that bad. But typically, if you have a callback for a technician and they're available to go, you send them. They're going no charge unless it's not what they initially went for. So what that helps do is make sure that they complete the entire service call, diagnostics call while they're there, to where they don't have to go back. So if they're doing the perfect service call every time they go out there, they won't have callbacks. You won't have to worry about that. But if they do have callbacks, it's coming out of their pocket. They don't want to go. So they're going to work to strive to bring their callbacks down. Everybody that I know that uses it, their callbacks are not zero, but they're as close to zero as they could possibly get. On the law side of it, just to cover that real quick before I shut this down, you will have to worry about making sure that your guys are at least making minimum wage. So you will want to get your guys trained up. You will want to make sure that they're using it properly, but you'll also want to make sure that the time that they're out there, that they're working, that they're covering at least minimum wage. You want them making what you're paying them an hour. So if they're out there working 40 hours a week and they're only turning in, 12 hours of ticket time, you got to figure out why. What are they doing? There's something going on. Okay. So I will put out the installers flat rate pay in the next video, and it was glad talking to everybody.